She even talked about how Nick came up with the idea that they should feed her to the pigs, and then she said that, well, I don't know if we can handle the dead weight of a 200-pound woman. That's not the way you talk about your mother, do you? But that's what she did. Again, all the signs of trauma and dissociation. This is the book review of Gypsy Rose Blanchard's recent book called My Time to Stand. And she starts off the book by saying, everybody considers my story to be true crime, but this book is a work of memory, my memory, and therefore is a memoir and not outsider's investigation. Very interesting, but her story truly is true crime. She's not famous because she's exhibiting any signs of her showing off her talent. She's not a good dancer. She's nothing like that. People know her because of her crime, and of course because the crimes committed by her mother towards her. As I read through the book, I can see her not taking responsibility for her actions, seeing herself as that small little girl who everything had just happened to. She does not show any signs of guilt, remorse towards her mother. In some passages, she talks in a very, very awful way about her. We will all go into that. Of course, there will be passages about Nick and how she is really putting him under the bus for almost everything. It starts off by saying, when Dee Dee Blanchard was 24 years old, she gave life to me. And then when she was 24, she took life from her, saying that at the age of 24, which is well in your adult years, she has taken this decision. She is now considered an adult and is charged as one. But because of her condition and the decision to make this a Munchausen by proxy case, she has gotten a lesser sentence that she actually should have gotten, in my opinion. This is very interesting, she said. I firmly believe that by doing so, I was saving the life she had guarded with all her might, meaning she's doing her a pleasure by killing her, that now she has taken that responsibility upon her and she will now guard her life for her mother, basically not taking responsibility again by saying, well, I'm sorry, it was my fault, I shouldn't have done so, and she would still be alive. The real problem is that she was in a situation she didn't want to be in, and she and Nick wanted to be together, and the fact that they were stuck in this role-playing scenario that they both have conceived with their imagination, acted out in real life. You see, the part of the roleplay is not any other option, like running away, like talking to your father. You know, that's not part of it. They had to act out their roles. When I was 24 years old, I took life from her, firmly believed that by doing so I was saving the life she has guarded so dearly, mine, which is a very narcissistic way of thinking about this situation. One incident occurred that was the last straw for Gypsy. That's why she decided that killing her mother was the best thing to do, and that was that she needed a simple operation on the voice box, survey on what's going on, but now she has changed that narrative into one of, let's cut Gypsy's throat for no reason. This came up in her interrogation at all, ever, that's what her mother said, or at trial. So maybe if it did come up, I will go into it, because that's something I will still look into. On various occasions in the book, she said that she was the one drugging herself with oxycodone, which is a very, very heavy drug. It's a pain medicine, but that's what she took herself and not her mother. Also, the feeding tube was not to put any food in her stomach, but it was to put fluids and medicine, so she was still able to eat very well. She said that her mother took full control over her, which was not the case because she could eat by herself. As she's saying here, I shook 3 oxycodone into my mouth and swallowed them dry, drenched in delusion, meaning saying that she was a drug addict as well, which she was perpetrating on herself with this Munchausen by proxy situation. Her mother was a liar. That's what she has been doing for a very long time. She lied about her virginity. That's what Gypsy is claiming in the book. She lied about her age to Rod, which is her father. But of course her father was not the best person either, and he was a bit of a womanizer. You know that stuff, not a good place to become a healthy adult, if you ask me. What I got out of the book is that Dee Dee Blanchard really loved attention a lot. She even attended the beauty pageant which she won, and after that attended many more. Loved the attention of people commenting on her. That's what she did with, with Gypsy as well, and craving attention for her needs, and that she was such a good mother. Kind of a narcissist, the one who loves themselves so much, and telling Gypsy all the time how pretty and special she was. And then she asked herself, is my mother trying to make me feel jealous? Or what the hell is going on here? She is talking a lot in her book about malnourishment, but as you can see in a previous video, where we can see Gypsy in her younger years, I don't see any malnourishment. You can see a lot of childhood abuse, and people who really are malnourished, they are like skin and bones. That's not what Gypsy is, but that's of course her case. Her claim is that she was so much abused to the point that that's the right thing to do, and that is to end Didi. What was really going on is that Didi Blanchard took over the role of a complete dominating her life decisions, everything, and of course not surprising that that's the time that she met Nick, who was the dominator in her life, playing roles in BDS. And again, even earlier in her mother's years, she was stealing a lot. She was stealing checks out of her grandmother's checkbook, is what she said, and that of course then later morphed into Gypsy becoming the mastermind criminal who knows exactly how to steal, and even talked about it with Nick on how she would steal for the things they needed for putting Nick under the bus for everything, and as if she is this helpless little sweet girl that just so happened to find Nick, and that he was so evil and with his role-playing BDSM stuff, it's like impossible that she could. But the whole thing is that she participated in this whole thing from the get-go. She was not forced. She could go when she wanted to, but she didn't. She stayed and talked to him, and even initiated a whole lot of them. So here she said how her mother knew exactly how to get stuff from the... Here she said that her mother knew exactly how to abuse the system to get things she wanted, and then she said, I'm not sure if remanding me into a wheelchair was part of the shame or it was a part of symptom of her Munchausen by proxy. See, she is now even confusing the two. It's one or the other. It's either Munchausen by proxy or it is a financial scheme, so which is it? She's not even sure of that herself. We can recall an episode where Gypsy told Nick in a text message that she thinks that she is bipolar. Well, she got that from her mother, saying that her mother was bipolar and had schizophrenia. This, of course, was not diagnosed, but that is what Gypsy said that her mother told her, saying that even her mother had her frightening highs and lows, which Gypsy had also, not only with Ryan, of which she basically told the whole world about it, and also with Nick, because Nick frequently said in text messages that she was scaring him, and that he wanted Kitty back, which was the good side of her, the baby, where they role-played Daddy and her, you know what I'm saying? Saying that the Munchausen syndrome by proxy was the most dangerous part of her abuse, so it was not the beating, it was not the malnourishment, it was none of that, it was the Munchausen by proxy. That means the adding onto her mind believing that she was ill when she wasn't, and that was the most dangerous part, so make no mistake about that. A friend of her mother said that, you know dear, your mother always wanted to be famous, to marry a rock star or an actor, but of course you passed that along to your children, and now she is right there in the spotlights where she wanted to be, and she has been from a very young age. So when she was questioned by the detectives, she said that they asked her if there were any bruises on her body, pointing to any abuse, beatings, all that kind of stuff, and she said no, because there weren't yet. But they couldn't find any signs of physical abuse. You see, physical abuse doesn't just sporadically come out of nowhere, it just is there, and you can see old bruises from months ago and from weeks ago, but they just weren't there. So there was no visible sign at the time of the interrogation of physical abuse or malnourishment. You can see that in the interrogation video. So it was, again, by her own saying, the Munchausen by proxy being the most dangerous part of her abuse. And we will look through the medical records to see if in fact there was Munchausen by proxy, because there are many people making videos about the fact that maybe this was an illusion and it was a financial scheme to begin with. As we can see, Didi stole wheelchairs from hospitals, possibly, and now we see Gypsy asking donations from people to give her baby stuff for the room and all that stuff, you know, so it's like a continuation of the scheme, basically, if you ask me. They had 5 wheelchairs, which is completely unnecessary, but you can see that Didi really was a hoarder. That's what she said. Her house was filled with stuff she don't need. Also claiming that her mother had a severe depression and had their own side effects. They were receiving disability checks for her actual bipolar disorder, which is really funny because in the earlier part she said that it was not diagnosed. So it's kind of funny that she received disability checks for something undiagnosed. You know, it is a grain of salt type of book. Is it true or not? It is something that you need to decide for yourself. Her mother making fake IDs was a common thing in their household, made to believe that that's the way you do stuff in life, you know. People come up as a theme that she was abusing drugs, the prescription medication, for herself, talking about how her mother chained her up to the bed or to herself with the dog leash after she tried to escape her to go to a man she met online who was much older. Her first attempt to escape, which did not work. She then of course told how she met Nick and that it was his world of fantasy and that he loved to be the evil vampire to do all these dirty things and that she was basically just there and, you know, he was doing all of it and he was in charge of the whole situation, of even introducing her to the BDSM role-playing. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that she continued in her role and even initiated a lot of things that she enjoyed. The fact that she could escape in his imaginary world, and as far as I'm concerned, they were both in the same thing together. And another thing, BDSM is something that people participate for a very long time. It's not new, and not every couple then proceeds to act this out in real life. That's why it is a role play, right? But these minds of these individuals show us that if there is no break, or you don't have any sense of good or bad, well, that's what you just continue to play out. That's what she said. It was a fantasy that came more and more into reality. It was not something that they just planned out in a day or two. No, it was a gradual process, and then both of them basically came to the eventual acting out of their fantasy in real life. She later called it a video relationship, and later in prison said that in a letter to him that, well, I believe that we don't longer fit, and I don't love you, and I hope that you now understand that I don't want to have anything to do with you. Basically using him for her own gains is what it is. She said Nick introduced the violence, the murders, the blood, the carvings, the brutal rape fantasies, and he was so afraid of losing his validation. I ignored his ex-girlfriend's Facebook warning that he was controlling and not all there. You see, completely shifting all the blame from her and moving it to him, that he was the one who was actually doing all this crazy stuff, and she was just there, and kinda just there, not having any part in it, not a significant part for her matter. And this is something that really makes me mad, because they should have equal parts in this situation, because she was who wanted to get out, but somehow people just don't get it. They think that she is just so sweet and innocent, because, you know, that's what she has learned, to play the sweet and innocent girl that everybody just thinks is so sad, and that's the way she talks about herself up to this point of me reading this book. That's what I get out of it. There is not one criminal murderer that doesn't have a sad story of childhood, of course, but after a certain point of growing up, you need to take your responsibility and decide what side are you on. Does not take responsibility at all, not even in the slightest. Now we will go to the episode where she tried to kill her mom, where after an argument she grabbed a BB gun and shot at her, and then she just said to her mom afterwards, I didn't purposely try to kill you with BBs, mama, I was trying to leave. Later on, when they were getting in the car, some situation occurred, and then Dee Dee said, are you trying to kill me? You know I'm not well, Gypsy. I swear if I die, it will be you who killed me. Well, you already shot me once, is what she told her. But of course, she is such a sweet little girl. I am telling you, no matter what the situation, it is never the answer, the M-word. And let me tell you something else. There are people who have way worse abuse than she. You can look up ritual abuse, and you will see that it is not even 1% of what Gypsy has been through. And these people who get out of that, they don't do that. Her only medical issue was a lazy eye, and of course the micro deletion. She unraveled it all when she was in prison, when she got the medical document. This is a very funny quote. She said, I watched a little bit of the documentary on Lifetime that we filmed while I was waiting to be released, and it was the first time I heard from a couple of doctors anything like Gypsy. If you're listening, I'm sorry. I wish I would have acted. I feel like I failed you. Not once in her books does she say, Mother, I am really, really sorry for what happened to you. I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish there was another way we could have do it. And I love you very much, my dear mother. There is a saying going on the internet that there is no real evidence of Munchausen by proxy because there were no operations that were done. And now she said, but you know, she toyed with the idea of filing a malpractice lawsuit. She has all the evidence. But Really though, she just wants to focus on her future and does not want to proceed with the lawsuit. I will look that up in the future. So this is all speculation, of course. She just got the plea deal, and that was the outcome of this whole fact. She just said that about Nick, that she wished she wasn't like him, so irrational, isolated, and disturbed. There is a reason why people don't search the public eye after committing a crime and being released. They just go undercover, change their name, their address. It's because it is all bad attention, and you should focus on your healing rather than becoming a public figure, is what she calls it. As a reality star is what she called herself also in the book. Because what happened is that she created a trauma in her life, dissociated from it, and now is trying to put it in a box and live her life like nothing happened in the limelight, but it is no good for her at all. It also goes into great detail what happened on the night of the crime and what it did to her. She is talking about it like it is nothing. There is no personality at all, and that's of course what you do, is when you have created a trauma in your life, you don't really have any emotions for it, and that's what we can see very, very clearly. She even talked about how Nick came up with the idea that they should feed her to the pigs, and then she said that, well, I don't know if we can handle the dead weight of a 200-pound woman. That's not the way you talk about your mother, do you? But that's what she did. Again, all the signs of trauma and dissociation, which means that she has not dealt with it and is now trying to move on as if nothing has ever happened, and that's the reason why she cannot take responsibility for it. Saying that, well, I did not want Nick to do it so violently, but he did. You know what I mean? It's like, what do you mean? It was your idea. What the hell? How can you do it not violently? There's no sweet way of committing the crime. That's like insanity. I am so out of my mind, like, reading this book. It is really, I would not recommend it because the money will go to her, but you should read it if you want to be pissed off. Saying that I don't want to look at the crime scene photos. My brain had created a reality that didn't exist. Exactly, that is exactly what dissociation is. It is what it does. It creates a reality that doesn't exist. The day that they had committed the crime, and after it was done, she said, I was stripped down in the bathtub. Not I stripped myself down. No, she was stripped down. You see, this is the mentality that she has developed due to her mother, that she is not responsible. What happens to her? She's not responsible for it. Other people are, because her mother always was responsible. This is also very confusing, as she says that I did not see my mother when it was done, but then she said later in the video, as I passed my mother's bedroom where it all happened, I didn't look in directly, but peripherally, and I saw mounds of blankets on the bed and bags of clothes. She was buried in her own chaos. Again, talking about her mother in a very degrading way. She was buried in her own chaos. Very, very good, right? Later on, when Nick and Gypsy moved in together, she had doubts because Nick wasn't as clean as she envisioned him to be, and she thought that, well, maybe it is not such a good idea to live together. But if you ask me, that is something that you prepare ahead of time. In her own words, she said Nick named her the mastermind. She named him the monster. He said he was trying to save me from abuse. I said my mother was my best friend, putting her again in that role of the helpless little girl who is just not in control of anything. He said I bought the knife, gave him the gloves, which is not so helpless at all, is it, to do that? And then I said he had a dark side and wanted to feed her to the pigs and rape her dead body. Well, who is the monster here? Let me tell you. This is a very interesting quote. And then he said my mother made people think I was sick. I said Nick was sick. The interesting part is that we can make out of it Nick did it because he wanted to help her, save her, and she is like in such a delusional mindset that claiming that she didn't believe that he would actually go through with it. They have been charged with the same crime, but he's now serving life and she is free, becoming a reality star. Something is not right here. Claiming that they wrote each other letters and left them in the wall of the recreation room. You see, there are so many things said here that I don't know what to believe, since she has a history of lies and deceit, and we will soon have to find out. Of course, everything was a facade, a scheme. even the feeding tube. She often speaks in a very poetic way, trying to pull on the heartstrings of people by saying, "After hearing about my mother's cremation, my soul turned into ash. I felt so dirty, so unclean. I craved holy water to absorb into my skin and dissolve me for my sin," which is really, really a poetic sentence, don't you think? And then it was found out that she wrote a letter to Aunt Rachel confessing to her crime of murder. She said, "Yes, I have a part in this, but my part is small." She said that she learned that her hair was brown, which is a complete lie. How can you not know that your hair is brown? It is not like you don't grow hair. Of course you do. It's a complete mirage facade, if you ask me. Saying Patterson also took into account my abuse, marked by my noticeable malnourishment, and agreed to allow me to plead guilty to a lesser crime of second-degree murder. And, of course, which is a lie, is there malnourishment? What's going on? She could sneak a laptop and maintain a computer internet relationship, as she calls it, with Nick, but she cannot sneak in Brad into her room. Now, to continue on her journey, she will now take it on her to become an advocate for children who have suffered abuse. But of course, that's not what we see. What we see is that she is now taking the role of a reality star, is what she calls herself. She says that "I am remembering you well," talking to her mother, "and making a positive difference with your memory." So this is a picture of them together, her father and her, but I don't see any malnourishment, not to my understanding at least. Here is where you can see that she has now gone from an inmate to a reality star, and all of that in just 6 months. And she even published a book twice. Well, if you're interested, there is no part in advocacy in this explanation. She says that she has misused social media and given too much credence to critics and haters, and have done and said things she regrets. If you ask me, she is not supposed to be online, but supposed to heal from this and to go on by herself without the media.